Okay, welcome everybody to our July 2nd GMAC meeting. The time is, usually Mary will tell us that, 6:07 as we start here. Is everybody on board, or do we have everybody attending tonight?
We do, Mr. Chairman. Don Hess is being admitted now, and we have another guest joining who is unrecognized.
Okay.
Well, the caller from 916, can you hear me?
Yes, this is Mark Carey. I have 223-3828.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I'll rename you here so we know who you are.
Okay, looks like we got, okay. So introductions and announcements. It looks like all the GCSD folks are online already too. That's good to see. Melissa, John Pedri, Don Hess, Don is on. Okay, so the GMAC council members are Melissa Finley, Donald Hess, Sherry, George, Lloyd, Tom, and Robert, just for your information, GCSD people attending.
And we also have Sheriff Matt Kendall with us tonight and the crew from GCSD.
Yes, and so that's one thing we'll amend on our agenda. Okay, so introductions, announcements. Any announcements tonight? Okay, on to our consent agenda. We have up for approval the minutes from our last month's meeting, June 4th. Has everybody had a chance to read and review those?
Yep. Yes.
I did all of your corrections, Robert, as of today and sent them out.
Okay.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda if there are no changes.
Second.
The entire consent agenda, or
yes,
just
the entire consent agenda?
Well, we may have to change the agenda a little bit, don't you think?
Oh, well, we could do that. Okay.
Yeah, so let's just go through
I withdraw the motion.
Okay, item by item. So let's, we have a motion to approve the June 4th meeting minutes. Do we have a second? Yes?
Move to approve, seconded by Sherry.
By Sherry, okay. So we'll go down the list. Well, Melissa.
Aye.
Aye. Don, aye or nay?
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Lloyd.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
And myself, Robert. That's an aye. Okay, thank you. Correspondence, we only have the one item which we will have down at number 11 on the agenda. That's the coastal development permit. Then we go on to approval of the agenda.
I would move to approve the agenda with the addition of Sheriff Matt Kendall at 3A.
3A, law enforcement report, Sheriff Matt Kendall. Okay, with that amendment to our current agenda, can we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I would just move to approve.
Okay, a second?
Second.
George. Okay, all down the list again. Melissa, in favor or no?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Aye.
Don and Sherry were both aye. George?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Robert is an aye. Okay. Thank you on that one. So we see our agenda before us. Do we have any public input on non-agenda items? Okay.
There are no other guests, Mr. Chairman. You can go ahead.
Hearing none, we'll move on. Status of the water moratorium. No, we're on to 3A. We have law enforcement here. I'm sorry, we just amended that agenda. So good evening, Matt. How are you since last month?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay.
So just a few things. The little burglary spree that went on in Irish Beach, it actually affected a lot more than Irish Beach when we got deeper into it. It looked like we had about 6 in Irish Beach, 3 in Fort Bragg, 2 in Willits. So we're up to 11. We've still got a little bit of stolen property that we have not identified an owner on. Therefore, we think that that's probably going to turn out to be more burglaries. It's hard to say whether or not it was from the coast or not, because you can see the vast distance that this little crew worked. There's a couple of little strange things. Luckily, we got them in custody within about 48 hours, but we're still having the occasional dribble in from that because the rental homes and whatnot have been closed, where people haven't been sending housekeepers over to check on them. But we're beginning to have more people check on places, and so we're cleaning that little crew up as fast as we possibly can. Just a few little housekeeping things for the sheriff's office. With the COVID stuff, so far our jail has remained completely clear of COVID. We did a release on Facebook yesterday. I hope you folks got to see it, because we began preparing for this back in January when we first heard of the COVID issues in China. And that served us pretty well. Currently, the county jail is down by about 30% in population. We're running from 194 to 205, whereas before we were always at 305. The new jail build, we're still working with the architects on it. We're looking at breaking ground about this time, I believe, next year. I'm looking at a projected opening date of basically January to February of 2023. That new jail is going to give us a lot of new options for programming in different housings, the mental health issues and things that we're facing right now, which kind of leads me to the next topic. I've been working with Sheriff Hone from Butte County, because he has a very good dual response program for deputies going out with mental health workers, kind of in that where we provide them with a good training and security for themselves. They provide us with good training in what their jobs are. And it seems to be working out really well in Butte County. I've been dealing with Dr. Janine Miller, who's the head of behavioral health here in Mendocino County, and we're beginning to make some headway on it. I think it's going to be a really good program, and Butte County right now, they were doing it on day shift, but they're looking at moving into days and swing shift, because they're getting a lot of work done. They're cleaning things up, and people are getting the assistance that they need. Right now, we're down on numbers. We've had several retirements and whatnot. The police academies being closed have not allowed us to pick up a lot of new deputies. They just recently opened on the 8th of June, and so we were able to send 2 of our corrections officers to the police academy, so they should be hitting the streets soon. The COVID patrols, I've been able to put deputy sheriffs towards them because of the closure of the courts. However, the courts are opening back up. Special Investigative Unit that is employed by HHSA is actually the lead on enforcement on this. We're trying to get with them for good coverage for this weekend. I haven't heard back yet. So we're going to try to figure out where we disperse personnel. HHSA has 5 detectives and 1 chief. And they work in Health and Human Services Agency. They do mostly investigations like welfare fraud and things like that. Anyway, they've got 6, and right now I've been able to dedicate just about 2.5 personnel. So, we're trying to work off each other's resources. Does anybody have any questions for me? Mary?
I do.
Go ahead, Mary. Go ahead.
I read on the front page of the ICO today that down at Mill Bend, there are there's a problem with large vehicles and off-the-road vehicles tearing up the beach. And they've had 6 fires, some of them very, very close to brush, of people camping there. And it happens at night when no one's around. If a fire starts in wind, we will lose the whole of Gualala. And somebody needs to be on top of that. Please, please get a copy of the ICO and read the front page, because it's very frightening to have somebody down there. They've been asked to leave. They did not leave. And they've left like 6 fire rings around. And they're
Mary,
tearing up the beach.
Can you describe the entrance of that to me? Because the Highway Patrol helped me out on Blues Beach, north of Fort Bragg. They were actually able to set jersey barriers. Is that one of those things where we could have them set the concrete barriers?
I can speak to that.
Oh, good.
So this is Lloyd Chasey. My wife is on the board of the Redwood Coast Land Conservancy. We went down this morning and put up signs that say no camping and no fires, several signs down there. And then we're putting in logs that you can bring your kayak through to the water, but you can't drive your truck through. So those are being put in. I think they may have been put in today. If not, it'll be tomorrow.
Okay. Now, we were having problems with the Blues Beach in between Fort Bragg and Westport. And because of the way that it's accessed off the highway patrol was able to help us out and put the big, heavy concrete Jersey barriers there. They did leave spacing to move a bicycle through it, to bring a kayak through it, but you can't get a vehicle through it. You can't get a four-wheeler through it. And so if there's any way that we can get with Highway Patrol on that, I can help you guys to work with them on that to make sure that, but if the logs solve the problem, great. If they don't, please let me know and I'll ask them for their assistance down there with the concrete barriers.
It would just be helpful to have them just, if they're down in the Gualala area, this is just north of the bridge on the west side of the highway. There's just a dirt road that goes down. If while they're in the area, if they could just take a spin down there and make sure there's no campers at night, that would be very helpful.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, it was quite a
huge.
It was quite a problem as described in the ICO today, and I suspect with the holiday weekend it may be worse in the next couple of days.
Yeah, there was someone.
And this is a huge asset to our community, and it's a boon to our community that we have this property now in public hands, and it needs to be preserved, and it does not need to be the cause of a large fire throughout the town. So I'm glad that you guys are going to be on that, and I'm glad to see that RCLC is also putting barriers up.
Yes. Yep. And
that's good. I don't want to lose that beach. I don't want to lose that property to the community. It's much too valuable to the community.
And very soon, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be putting a chain across the top of the road. Remember, it was taken down about 3 years ago. But we're going to work with the Parks Department, the Gualala Regional Park. They're going to unlock and open the chain in the morning and close it at night, so we can hopefully prevent any campers down there.
Good. Of course, you can always put your camping stuff from the parking lot that's across the street.
Right.
So I don't know if maybe the sheriff should check any cars that are parked across the street in that large parking lot where that sign is, "Welcome to Walla." That huge wooden sign.
Yep.
It's going to take some education over time too, because a lot of people have been used to doing that for so many years, and now that there's that change of ownership, I think it's good to hear that you guys are taking steps right away to curtail that, Lloyd.
Yep, we're putting in for a coastal development permit for the gate, and we'll be working with the regional parks.
Right.
Great. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Sure.
I have a question, please.
Go ahead, Don.
Sheriff Kendall, can you explain to me what the law is regarding vehicle access to the Gualala River? Because I don't think this is a problem restricted to that Mill Bend area. I think it's a problem, maybe not so much the camping or the fires, but vehicle access along the river, going back along the old Gualala highway there, towards the Green Bridge. I think that's an issue. I just am not sure about what the law is regarding that.
Well, the law is pretty well defined under 602M of the vehicle or of the penal code. Trespass by motor vehicle. I mean, there's all different types of trespass. However, if you just walk onto an unposted piece of property, you've got to be asked to leave. You've got to be advised of, what the property lines are. However, trespass with a motor vehicle is a different story. You can drive motor vehicles on highways. You can drive motor vehicles on roads. You can drive motor vehicles on driveways. However, if there is a gate across anything, if it's shut in any way, shape, or form, you are trespassing with a motor vehicle. And if you leave the road and you drive into a farmer's field, you are trespassing with a motor vehicle, even if that field is unmarked. It's a field under cultivation, and motor vehicles do not belong there. So I'm not sure. When you talk about the old road there, is it something that is still maintained by the county? Is it maintained by a private entity? Is it
It's county maintained, Don, back to the Green Bridge.
Up to the Green Bridge or just past it, it's county maintained. So I'm talking about the area before you get to the Green Bridge. There's some open areas where vehicles can get through. There is no gate. There's nothing that prevents them. And they, four-wheel drive vehicles can get down onto the river, and they do.
I believe you're talking about the area that locals refer to as Switchville.
Yes.
Okay, I know where that's at.
Okay.
No, you can't drive off the road there, and you can't drive down into the river there. If it's not a road, you can't drive onto it unless it is your property.
Right.
It's trespass with a vehicle.
So, okay, so next question is this ever enforced?
Well, a lot of times Fish and Game enforces it. They've got 2 or 3 different laws for that. Deputies will enforce it. If there are people down there, they have to prove that the property belongs to them and how they got down there. And then, one of the things that Fish and Game always enforces on is anytime that you're silting in a riparian zone. And when you look at the Gualala River, there is a huge amount of riparian zone around it.
Okay. Any other questions for Sheriff Matt Kendall? Any other updates from you, Matt?
No, I think that's about it. We're living in some exciting times. I think that we're going to make some good decisions this year. And I think that's about it. If anybody didn't have any questions for me, then maybe I'll get supper on time.
No other questions? Okay, we'll make sure.
Bon appetit.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff
And-
Kendall.
And congratulations on the great results in the jail. That is really impressive.
Well, we realized that eventually we're going to have it because eventually we're going to have it everywhere. But the fact of the matter is we're ahead of the game enough now where we can shut down an entire wing. There is no one in jail. I mean, to be honest with you right now, it has been distilled down to people we absolutely cannot let go, but we're ready for the problem now.
Yep.
And, the work that Captain Pierce has done on this, it's amazing. But, we've been to this show before. We had chickenpox a couple of years ago. And, most folks our age, we've had vaccinations. Most of us have a vaccination scar on us, things like that. But one of the things that we were concerned about was we have a lot of kids who grew up in Mexico who work for me as deputies. And so we were concerned about, were they ever vaccinated? Are they going to have, and I guess chickenpox as an adult is really not a fun thing. And so we've been prepared. We've done a lot of work on it. And when it happens, I just know we're going to be ready for it.
Perfect.
All right. You guys have a wonderful evening, and thank you for the invite.
Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you.
Dinner. Okay.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Bye.
Hope to see you next month.
Appreciate it, Sheriff.
So we're back to item number 4 on the agenda, and that's the status of the Walla water moratorium. We have we don't have an updated status from North Gualala Water Company at this point. We had one this past month from David Bauer. So if you go to the USGS website, like I tend to do every month or a couple times a month, you'll see that the current bypass flows are on the Gualala River North Fork are historically low, I would say. 5.63 for this is the bypass flow for this point in time in the season, which is early. So we're looking at maybe a mandatory conservation measures hitting us much earlier this year than in the past. I don't know yet. We'll see what the coming weeks bring. But that's just what I'm seeing. Also, I was wondering, I noticed some work going on Pacific Woods Road where the water storage tanks are located close to Friendly Avenue. And it also appears that a lot of blue markings are starting to appear up on the ridge where North Gualala Water Company meters and water facilities are. So I'm kind of curious if there was going to be any forthcoming update from North Gualala Water Company on things that might be occurring along those lines. But we'll hear from David maybe next month, or maybe we'll hear from somebody else on that. Anything else?
If I'm remembering correctly, after we went through his If I'm remembering correctly, after we heard from him last month, we still had a lot of unanswered questions from his report. So I do hope he comes soon.
Okay. I did notice that, well, we're here, we'll get to that next month. Okay, anything else on the water moratorium? It's dire, though, I get a feeling. We'll go on to the main event for the evening, and that'll be the report from the Gualala Community Service District, and that is the recent grant award and future expansion plans for Zones 3 and Zones 4, and the possible creation of Zone 5. We've got Chris Troyan, the GCSD District Manager, Randy Burke, a board member, and Mark Carey, the engineer, online to discuss that with us. Thanks for attending. Who would like to start that discussion? Chris?
Yeah, I can if you want.
Okay.
All right, so what we're trying to do, as you all know here in Gualala, the district, so only services zones 1 and 2, which is most of the Highway 1, and it goes up Pacific Woods right to Finley Avenue, and then it comes up Old Stage up to Bodie Tree. And then I believe Zone 4 ends at the top of Pacific Woods in Old Stage. I'm not 100% sure where Zones 3 and 4 separate. I don't have the map in front of me. But we're trying to also create a Zone 5, which would take us past Bower Park all the way to the end of Ocean Ridge there. Pretty much the whole town of Gualala we're trying to get serviced by the district. Part of that grant that we got, Mark can elaborate more on this, but it's going to consist of mapping the old system that was put in the late 80s, early 90s. As most of you guys know, the maps that we currently have are inaccurate. We never got as-built. The engineering firm at the time when they built it never gave the district any as-built. So Mark has been working diligently and doing a GIS system for us. That's almost completed. We're hoping to integrate that on our website so all the customers can see where their lines and stuff are at on their property. What else? It also consists of doing a complete management asset plan on it so we can find out what's in the ground and what the current cost would be to replace everything. That hasn't been done in a very long time. We're also going to be doing a rate study along with that management plan. Mark, is there anything else that you can elaborate on that?
Well, I kind of threw a quick little agenda together. I could blast through that real quick if you want and just kind of recap on some of the stuff. Is that okay?
That's fine. We'd like to hear it, Mark.
Yeah, I think you hit most of it, Chris. Incidentally, the question regarding the blue marking, one of the things we're doing under this grant is we're mapping all of these zones that Chris just described. And in so doing, we'll be planning potential future alignments in a little more detail. As some of you may recall, there was a previous study done by Winsler and Kelly. Not sure the exact year of that, Chris. Was it early 2000s, I think?
Yeah, it was 2003, I believe.
Yeah, so basically they did a kind of a quick map plan study of using USGS maps and just kind of drew rough alignments. This grant has afforded us the opportunity to actually map potential alignments in much more detail. There'll be a surveyor out next week going along Pacific Woods, along Old Stage, Gualala Court, doing a fair amount of detailed mapping in these zones 3, 4, and 5 that Chris discussed. Some of that mapping will also be picking up existing water lines for the purpose of avoiding any future conflicts with the water. So we're able to kind of kill two birds with one stone. We're also mapping the entire water system for North Gualala. We've been assisting them for about 1.5 years, 2 years. But in general, as far as this grant is concerned, as Chris mentioned, we've got a pretty significant grant planning study. We've spent around $100,000 to date. We've accomplished quite a bit already. There was also another component to this. The permit was done fairly hastily originally for this plant, and the board has been pushing to readdress some items with the discharge permit, the waste discharge requirements as it relates to the Sea Ranch Golf Links, and the relationship between them and GCSD will be further refined through an upcoming permit renewal process. We've submitted a new application to them. There'll be some additional health and safety measures put in place on the golf course as a result of the new permit, as well as addressing a violation that the district has currently received regarding the disposal of solids. Right now, the sludge is, the biosolids that come out of the plant have been just disposed of on site, and they've put essentially a cease and desist action together on that. We'll be doing a separate biosolid study, as well as looking at the vulnerabilities to the current practices, which involve land application of all of the septage that's pumped out of the downtown area. And then, of course, looking at the assets of this existing sewer system. So there's quite a bit involved here. As Chris mentioned, a rate study, looking at these expanded service areas. His crews actually were afforded the opportunity to buy some new equipment so they can locate things in much more detail. They have a new device that was funded through the program. So right now it looks, the project is moving ultimately, as Chris mentioned, toward expanding the sewer service area. The caveat here is what MC Engineering, our company, has been integral in these small communities in helping to acquire grant funding, not only for planning, but for construction purposes. We recently completed a fairly expansive sewer study in Clear Lake Oaks. You guys also fall into a disadvantaged community status due to the relatively low income in the area, below the, I think it's below 80% of the median household income for the state. So we have a good likelihood under our plan to get funding for this expanded sewer system. Of course, there would always be individual connections for those that opt in to connect, but the previous engineer had kind of put together a cost, and I think it was looked at, it was looked down upon largely by the community because of the large cost of the initial infrastructure. And our goal is to try to get this planning document done, emphasize the health and safety concerns. So those are some of the objectives that we have really are renewing and updating this waste discharge permit, improving the mapping, looking at the biosolids treatment and removal strategies, evaluating short and long-term rate structures that are sustainable for the district. Right now, there's really some challenges with respect to some of the liabilities that have been assumed by the district, and then ultimately improving the quality of the the groundwater, the surface water in the area through the ability to connect more homes to a public sewer system. So there's a fairly high failure rate going on, as evidenced by our recent discussions with some of the local septic service people. So we're embarking on that now. And, we've been at this now for a couple years. It took about 1.5 years, 2 years to get this grant. This is a 100% grant through the state to facilitate this planning study. All of the mapping, biosolids rate study will be reimbursed 100% to the district through the State Water Resource Control Board. As I mentioned, we've finished a lot of this already. The application process, of course, took quite a while. The mapping of all the assets. We've also used a drone in the downtown area to map both water and sewer services, and we put together tablet-based GIS tools that ultimately will be online as well for the community to view where the water and sewer lines are, where the septic tanks are, et cetera. So we're right now finishing up the mapping. This week we'll be doing the expanded areas, zones 3 and 4, with the surveyor. Those maps will be very useful for a lot of things in the future for both the water and wastewater utility. And then I want to mention also, we did some sampling of the area creeks, which we did confirm there are some health concerns right now with the way these things are discharging. Some of them discharge into the same watershed that the water supply is being pulled out of. And given the soils, the slopes, the relatively high failure rate, 50 inches of rainfall. There's in the fact that septic systems simply are not designed to last much more than 40 years or so. A lot of these are seeing their useful life, and there's high costs associated with mitigating that if it's done on an individual basis. So some of the upcoming tasks will be completing these topographic surveys. We hope to engage the community in this through some additional public workshops. One of those things we're going to be doing is doing some site-specific surveys once we get these alignments plotted out to see how easy it will be for individual homes to connect, whether it be by gravity or pump system similar to what they have now. We'll be looking at the possibility of putting septic receiving at the plant as opposed to relying on this land disposal area that they have now, which with COVID, it did expose some vulnerabilities to that. They were almost shut down the disposal, which would have been very difficult and costly for the district to address. And then, of course, looking at the rates and the long-term sustainability for the district. So the near future, we hope to send out some mailers and do some outreach. We're doing the septic failure analysis, and then we'll be doing those site-specific surveys. And then long-term, completing this rate study, finalizing this alignment study and cost estimates. We'll do some follow-up public meetings ultimately. And then, as I mentioned, applying for construction grants for the related improvements, both at the plant and in the collection system as a whole. And then ultimately design and construction of select facilities as the community sees fit. And a lot of that depends on, of course, emphasizing the health and safety issues involved and garnering support from the community for the project, with the understanding that that we'll be seeking, some grant funding to help mitigate the current issues. So that's all I have. Sorry, I was a little quick there on that, trying to get through it, but.
Oh, that was informative and thorough. Hey, well, I think. One question I have is it going to be mandatory for all those folks in zones 3 and zones 4 to hook up?
I think the goal right now. Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think the goal is to try to get, if we can get the main line grant funded, and then give the people the opportunity to connect as they see fit, right, Chris? I mean, that's kind of the goal, right. But that may be mandated in part by the county. And John, are you on the phone? I think if you're there, you could. John Pedri on my staff has completed several of these studies for small communities through implementation. Served as city and district engineer for several communities, and also worked with the state. I don't know if John's on there.
Yeah, I'm on, Mark. Go ahead. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit, John, as far as our vision for whether or not it becomes mandatory?
I think it's all related to the amount of grant funding and in terms of eligible areas. Typically, the state, for cost-effective purposes, would like to see as many of a lot sewered as possible in terms of how they spend their money and what the benefit is for the community. Again, I think that we don't need to force them to connect. I think it's more of an educational process. We meet with them, we provide surveys that we mail out, we get feedback from the property owners. And if anything, we try to lighten the burden on what their connection fee may be or what their costs may be. And so that's the goal and objectives that we have. And as we go through this, we're going to define problem areas, of course, and areas that have failing septic systems due to slopes or soils or other conditions. So it's a process, and I can't give you an answer one way or the other where we would have to sewer everybody. I just can't do that at this point, but we will look into it. We'll work with the customers as best we can.
Well, the reason I asked the question was because in the very beginning, when the sewer district came to town, zones 1 and zones 2, it was pretty much mandatory. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here with a sewer system.
Right.
So that was my I was wondering if it has to be that way again, or if there's going to be some flexibility like you're describing.
Well, our hope there is some flexibility, and how we draw the boundaries and what we serve and which connection, which homes we serve you know, it's going to be a process, and that's all I can tell you at this point. Trying to leverage the grant money with the State Water Board is really critical at this point. They don't have enough grant money to go around for small communities that are in hardship situations. So what they're trying to do is to find communities that have true water quality problems. And that means you would be classified as a Class A, B, or C priority, which opens the door for grant funding. If you're anything less than that, D, E, F, whatever other classifications they have, you may not get grant funding. So it's important that we identify as many problem areas as we can identify, and then we try to develop a boundary that works. And again, like I'm going to say, to be mandatory, it's a hard one to say at this point. I can't say whether or not it will be mandatory or not at this point.
I'm Randy Burke here. So, John Pedri, mentioned the Cdbg grant for people who want to hook up and don't have to pay a whole bunch of money to do that. Remember that, John? Yeah, there are other programs that I've been able to, in the past, acquire grant funds for and from. And Community Development Block Grants is one avenue in which you can acquire money to put in service lines and lighten the burden of the homeowner. The USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, also has what they call, I think it's a 502 low interest loan program. So there's other supplementary loan programs and even grant programs out there that may be able to help as we get into the study more. So yes. Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for the?
I have a question.
Melissa Finley.
Yes. I have a question. Is there being any testing done for the coronavirus genome in the wastewater?
Currently, this is Chris Troyne, General Manager. Currently, we are not testing the water right now for various reasons. One, the cost of the test has more than, it's about 10 times more than it was a month ago. Right now, it's $1,200 per test, and they want at least 4 tests from each of your sources. And since we take the north side of Sea Ranch and Gualala, you would have to take a total of a minimum of 8 samples, which is about $10,000 to do this test. And the only thing it's going to tell us is that, yeah, there may be coronavirus in the sewers, but by the time it goes through the treatment process and is stored in the storage pond, it's dead or neutralized.
No, you have to test it. You have to test it when it's fresh. Before it's
right.
You have to test it untreated. And I would think that once it gets
I understand that.
Wouldn't you just need one test at that one place where the confluence of all of it?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if we test it now, we find it in the system. Okay, now do we test every home? I mean, we got over 400 connections right now, and I mean, that would get costly, you know what I mean? And so that's one of the reasons why I'm not doing it.
Okay, the reason to do it is to find out if the virus is indeed in the community. That's all it is. Then all you do is tell the health people, okay, we found it here. And then you don't do anything else.
Well, I have been in
much
talks
easier
with the
ways
county.
to do that.
I have been in talks with the county.
Let Chris speak. He's got the floor.
Okay.
I have been in talks with Ted from the county, the supervisor, Ted Williams, and he is trying to get us funding so we can test it. I'm just waiting to hear back from him to see whether we can do it or not, and the county may fund it for us.
Good, because that is a potential tool for early detection before it's being shown in the people. I mean, they're doing this.
We were gonna test it.
Okay.
We were gonna test it about a month ago when it really started, hitting heavy, and the test went from $120 a test to $1,200 a test.
That's bullshit. Pardon my Anglo-Saxon there.
So Randy here, there's a sewer dump pond over in Point Arena, and we tested that, and we came up negative. And they take everything that comes out of the septic systems, and they take the porta potties and everything else, and we had nothing. So that was a $120 test. And so that pond seems to be okay. So talking to Chris, I mean, all you're trying to do with BioBot, who is the agency that communicates that at $1,200 a test now, did it for 120 before, and they're doing a national average to find out if there's a community spread. And, you know, you can try to separate that between what's going on with Mendocino and Sonoma County, but, you know, Mendocino County is not getting any more money for testing for COVID like they did 2 days ago or 3 days ago down at Point Arena or at RCMS. So we're kind of on our own. So does it really matter is the question. Does it really matter? I mean, you just have to be careful. And the sewer, what happened with BioBot did this study over in Lake County and found out that there were infections going on up there after they tested 1, 2, the third time they found there was an infection in the community through the sewer. Is it really important to do that type of sewer testing? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to spend the money to find out if people in the Sea Ranch and Gualala have endemic proportions of the COVID disease? And, you know, I don't know. I don't know if that's what it's all about the money. You know, how much do you want to spend? And you know, you have two places you can test. You can test in Gualala, you can test in the Sea Ranch, and then what?
It really wouldn't change people. It shouldn't change how people act. People should act like they have it and that other people have it. That it's you have
absolutely.
You have to act like it's a community. So I was just curious because I hadn't heard anything about it, and I don't read a newspaper. So.
Well, you know, the pond that everybody takes everything over to Bill Hayes' place over there in Point Arena, we thought, oh my God, it's got to be in here, and it wasn't.
It wasn't.
And because they bring all the septic. Well, GCSD brings all their septic over there. RD Bill brings the septic over there. Everybody brings the septic over there, and they had nothing. So, and we even talked to the State Regional Water Quality Control Board people, Charles Reed and Trevor Strickland, I can think his name is, up in Mendocino County, and they said, hey guys, the second the sun hits it or you put chlorine onto it, it's fine. So GCSD puts chlorine onto their stuff, and I was worried about the liability that GCSD would have by putting the water out on the golf course. And they said, hey, you know, once you hit it with chlorine, once you hit it with sun, it's done. And that's what we heard from the state. The state said, don't worry about the liability. You have none. And that was on a phone conversation with Trevor Strickland and Charles Reed. And everybody knows who Charles Reed is if you work in the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And they said, don't worry about it. So,
the only value of a test is early detection of the circulation of the virus in the population. That's all.
Absolutely. You want to find out if you have it in your community, you don't hit it.
Oh no, you don't have to worry about it in the sewer because after treatment, it's gone.
Yeah, but you could indicate that it was there if you picked it up on a test. Like Chris says,
tell the health department.
What's that?
Tell the health department, oops, I think we have it here. That would just mean that there were a fair amount of asymptomatic infections, and that would mean that you need to do more testing, even though no one's sick.
Well,
Melissa,
but you know,
Randy, Melissa and Randy, can we move on to maybe a non-COVID question for the moment, and we can always come back to it?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a lot of information there on the COVID stuff. But one question that just occurred to me, I'm looking at the map that Tom so nicely put up here on our screen, and I recall from years gone by that the GCSD Zone 1, Zone 2 boundary coincides with the urban-rural boundary for the planning area here in Walla Town Plan. Will that urban-rural boundary need to be moved up to the ridge if you expand it to Zone 3 and Zone 4? That's kind of a planning question. Have you looked into that?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Also, Zone 5, I think I mentioned it once before, if that ever were to occur, that would have to go through LAFCO, right, Chris?
Right.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. But that I wish I could mark it somehow on your map there. Do you have any better maps? This was one of the original maps that I kept from way back when the original district boundaries were formatted.
I think I might have the same map. I got mine from when Bonnie retired. I took hers.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the only map that I got. I have a couple of other old ones that are there, but I think they're probably the same ones you got.
Okay. But
I was going to suggest, this is Tom. I was going to suggest that you outline the areas you're talking about for the expansion and put that map up on your website. I went there looking earlier tonight and couldn't find any map at all of the district or the areas that you're talking about. So that would be something, before you go out and tell the public about this, they probably want to know where you're talking about.
That'd be a good idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a suggestion for you guys.
Back to COVID, or can I ask another question?
Ask away.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Wait a minute.
My question was
Melissa, you're hard to hear. What was your question again?
I want to know the testing on pre-treatment sewage for coronavirus.
Were you able to understand that, Chris?
I think she said that she was already. I think she said you already asked her question. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yes, I already asked it and got a very thorough, very good answer.
Okay.
Which I appreciate. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask another question. I was wondering, years gone by, the GCSD did a $100,000 study to bring us the main sewer line up to a proposed school site. Is that of any help, that study, in your current undertaking for mapping and for your proposed expansion into the zones 3 and zones 4? Was that of help?
Well, Mark would better answer that one, but I think it was a little bit.
Okay. Because that went up.
Was that the Winsler Kelly, Chris?
No, they did another one after that. I think it was in 06 or maybe 07, somewhere in there. They did one when they were talking about doing that proposed school. There was another one done. I think it was done by Belgian Rays, if I remember right.
Okay. I don't know that I have that one, but yeah, it'd be good to get.
Randy,
I think I have a couple copies up at the plant. I'd have to dig them up, but I think I have some.
All right, I might come by tomorrow and grab that.
It was from
we're not there tomorrow. Tomorrow's a holiday.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Monday.
Yeah, we'll be there Monday.
It was a mainline study from roughly Bodie Tree Lane past Gualala Court up to where the old Bauer Field is there, roughly, right?
Yeah.
That's what I remember. Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that. Anything like that helps.
Because you mentioned earlier that you have done about $100,000 in studies so far, and so I was wondering if you're referring to that or not.
Yeah, no,
most of the money we spent. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, just all that stuff I mentioned. You know, the permit, the mapping, et cetera. That's where we spent most of our money so far.
So
we probably spent about 60% of that budget of the grant on the new waste discharge permit. And most of that money went to that so far.
I see. So any other council members have questions for the GCSD?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please, you got the floor, George.
Okay, just real quick, what zone pertains to the area that's east of Church Street? Up in the area where we have our emergency response infrastructure up there, the fire station, clinic.
I'm not 100% sure where the boundaries are, but I believe that's in zone 2, I think.
Yeah, 2.
Okay, so that's already been mapped up there, is what you're saying?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
The only thing that we still need to map out, and that's one of the reasons why we bought the GIS unit, is to map out the laterals that come out of the septic tanks that connect to our main line. Because we just have preliminary drawings, and most of those drawings are wrong. We just spent 2 days out on Robinson Reef tracing a line that the map shows it goes north when it actually goes south. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use our unit, and then we plot it as we go, and then we're able to update, give it to Mark's guys, and then they're able to update the maps. And then once we get everything set, I want to incorporate it on our website, and that's, where the homeowners should go in. You could see, I'm hoping to get it to where we can, when we do our tank checks, we'll have it on the website to where you guys can go see and say, oh, the tank was checked a week ago or a month ago or whatever, maybe it was a year ago. That way we can keep on our toes, and then it keeps you guys informed. That's our goal.
Yeah, so the zone 1, zone 2 boundary is roughly right above Gualala Court there, George, where you see the 145-172. That triangle there is roughly the border. It's the rural urban boundary also right there.
Yeah.
Actually down by a little further down, Tom. 145-172. You see that closer down where the PG&E is right there.
Yes. I see it.
So you're with RCMS, and the ambulance district is within zone 1 and zone 2 for sure.
Yeah. The reason I asked the question is that any high density residential development in the future that's in Gualala within the boundaries is most likely going to be in what's left of the Gualala Planned Development District.
Right.
And that, a lot of that's contained in that area above or east of Church Street uphill there. Mm-hmm. But there's not a lot of development there now, but
no.
I don't know what infrastructure there is for the for sewer hookups up in there. And there's also some parcels on just to the west of Church Street also that are right across from Cypress Village, right in that area. And a lot of those are parcels that currently aren't connected. They don't have septic tanks nor are they connected with the system. So.
No, I believe there are stub outs there though.
Yeah, there may be a couple, yeah.
Any other council member questions for the GCSD? Okay, well, I guess we'll get future updates from you all, Chris.
Oh yeah.
When you have a local forum or whatever you are planning on giving, how you will give us an update, and we'd love to know.
Oh yeah. Like I said, like Mark said, we plan on doing a lot more public outreach from this point on.
Okay.
Because that's going to be a critical part of this whole process, is making sure the public's informed and and making sure we're informed too by the public. I mean, we try to think of everything, but we can't think of it all. So.
Well, it's nice to see you guys run your game.
Randy here. We've been marking out a lot of the water lines for the next survey that's going to come up on Monday, and a lot of people come out and go, "Oh my God, if we could get sewer up here, we'd be so happy." So that's just a little bit of part and parcel. So
the blue markings you're talking about, Randy, is more related to the sewer district, right? Than that I've been seeing up there.
Yes, we're marking it out because MCE Engineering is going to bring up some surveyors on Monday, and we want to make sure that they understand when they try to design, if they ever do, the sewer line, what the conflicts might be
I see. Mhm.
between the water and the sewer. And it's just the way to do it. So
Yeah.
that's it.
It was a little bit neglected when we first did the project way back in 90.
Well, you know, we're in the 21st century, right?
That's
So
right.
now we can do it right.
Yeah.
I'd like.
How far north will it run on Old Stage Road?
Well, as
How
far as
far
I know, up to John. As far as I know, as far as we've marked is up to John Robertson's house on the right-hand side of the road on Old Stage, past the airport. I don't know how far this. I have no idea how far the sewer would run past that. I don't know. That's what we have to do in the design and, you know, figuring out what's going on. So, like Mark said, we're trying to figure out all the. Well, like Mark Carey said, we're trying to figure out all the failures in the systems and trying to figure out who needs to connect.
I have no idea where
We would,
this man lives.
Okay.
our ultimate, oh, go ahead.
Who else has a question? Go ahead.
I just want to compliment you guys on being proactive and seeking out the funding from the grants so that can really enhance the safety and health of our community. It's I think it's to be commended.
Thank you. Public health is the biggest thing that we are dealing with. Yes, thank you. Right on, man.
Good.
And a functioning sewer system is the backbone of civilization. They found that out in Rome.
Amen.
We're going to do it in lead pipes.
Uh-oh.
Was doing much better than lead pipes. The insanity comes from somewhere else.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. Well, should we stop for now, and we'll look forward to further updates from the GCSD on this. That was very informative. Anybody else? No?
Build us an aqueduct to get more water.
Well, yeah, we're hoping to hear more news on the water moratorium at some point. And maybe, I heard, Mark, your engineer for the GCSD is also working on some things for the water company. So maybe we'll be able to do this more as a community and get some further transparency and get more updates as we go here. We all hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have some ideas too that we've been working on to assist in that effort, and we are working with North Gualala. We've got a new tank, for instance, that we're trying to get a grant for at Anchor Bay. We're getting close on that. So yeah.
Okay, Chris, Mark, and Randy, thanks very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Anything else at this point? No? Okay. We'll move on then to item number 6, council matters. Under the GCAP ad hoc committee, don't have any real written update from our project engineer or project manager, Frank Demling, on that. So as was your instructions, the council's instructions at last month's meeting, we are to get everything in an email from Frank, and I didn't receive anything this month, so I don't have anything really to report. Anything that you might have information on, Tom, on the GCAP?
No, same thing for me. I'm waiting. I have not received an email.
Okay, anybody else? No, okay. Then I guess we move on to another big event tonight, which is the Public Safety Power Shutoff and Emergency Preparations Committee. I saw the document that you sent us, committee members, and you've got the floor.
Okay, I'll start out, and then I'm sure everybody can chime in as I go along here. The committee did meet this week on Tuesday, on the 30th. We reviewed the most recent draft, which you now have, and the ability to review yourselves. We've named it the Walla Disaster Preparedness Guide, and we did some editing and added some website addresses and reference information toward the end. One of the things that we did during the month was we participated in the public forum. This was the MCOG public forum where they talked about the Mendocino County Fire vulnerability assessment and the emergency evacuation preparedness planning. So this document here, which some of you have probably seen, but I want to refer everybody to the website, the web address. It's www.mendocinocog.org. And I believe, as I recall, I think Lloyd was also in that call. I remember you chimed in there. But I made some notes. I was able to access the documents through that website. It's pretty easy to find. But on pages 98 through 101 and page 126, there's specific sections in the wildfire evacuation plan. They're called Planning Area 3, Planning Area 4, and that's the southwest and west central and coastal areas. But in those pages, you'll find a description of some of the evacuation routes, which we also took note of when we were preparing the final draft, and I see that you've got it coming up here. We had some good descriptions for evacuation routes. I wrote the introduction and the materials checklist. Sherry worked on the gathering points and resources and references. Don did a great job of creating the map and also including the descriptions for the evacuation routes. So we've had a good team effort over the last 2 months. We've gotten a lot accomplished. We're expecting this document to be not so much a finished product, but it's going to be a continuing work in progress and an ongoing dialogue, hopefully, for the community. We plan to post it on the GMAC website. We don't know yet if the South Coast Fire District has a website. They have one, but we don't know what shape it's in, but I'm going to talk to Greg Warner about that. We wanted to get a copy to the council members first. We also have a number of volunteers who were involved in the first community forum that we're going to reach out to for their comments on this guide. And at the same time that we're doing that, I'm going to also give a copy to Greg Warner for his comments. Greg is actually the person who originally asked for someone to come together and put this together. It was largely to assist him in his efforts during a disaster, to be able to focus on the things that he needs to focus on and have something that is a working tool that he can have someone that he can delegate to basically put this guide into action. But the primary theme of this guide is that, based on what we've learned both nationally and locally from the current pandemic crisis, is that every locality and every family unit and household really has to develop their own plan, because everybody lives under different circumstances. So this guide is a basic document that people can build on, and it has references and information that people can look to inform themselves and to anticipate what their needs will be during different types of disasters. One of the things that I'm going to let Sherry talk about this, but she's done some outreach this week with county and state people that are involved with emergency preparedness planning, and we're also taking some guidance from them as well. So, in fact, I'm going to pass this over to Sherry and let her take this and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
Thank you,
Thank you, George. One of the things I've been focused on as we develop this, and George has done a terrific job of sort of leading all of this, and we have met every week for the past 5 or 6 weeks now as we worked on things. But my focus has been sort of the humanitarian side, and where can we have a communication center? Where can we have resources for people to, if they need a place to go? We've identified several. I've been out talking to large gathering places like Gualala Baptist Church, like the community center, And we know some of the issues with the community center and why it wasn't available and not working in the last power outage. I met this week with Seuss to talk about the art center, and he's very, very excited about their possible role as a temporary shelter. I also, yesterday afternoon, and after I'd spoken with Seuss was talking about some of the requirements that the state has for people that are, for places that are going to act as emergency shelters. And that got me thinking, did some internet research on what some of those requirements were. I found tons and tons of material, but nothing that answered the question. So I reached out to Ted Williams and just said, you know, GMAC is working on putting together a disaster preparedness guide, set of guidelines for Gualala. But who should we be talking to make sure we're well plugged into what else is going on in other places, and that they know what we're doing, so that when we even have a plan. And what kind of requirements does both the county and the state have for emergency short-term shelters should people need it, even if it's a power outage and they just need to go someplace and charge cell phone batteries and computers and have a cup of coffee. Ted responded within about 15 minutes and immediately put me in touch with two people, one at the county level and one at the state level. And he apparently forwarded my email to both of them, and I got replies from both of them also yesterday afternoon on issues like ADA accessibility. There is a requirement that showers be available. There are quite a few other things, but I've been put in touch with Brent Blazer with the County Emergency Services Organization and Becky Emery at HHS. They are right now up to their earlobes in COVID things, but they both reached back in response to Ted's guidance and said that they would be happy to work with us and answer any questions and point us in the direction of further information and additional requirements. So as George mentioned, this is going to be an ongoing thing. We'll be learning as we go. We'll be adding to our guidelines as we get additional information, as I get places locked down that we can cite as emergency gathering places, those kinds of things. But so it's going to be ongoing. We're learning as we go, but we're developing a group of resources that I think are going to be valuable as we put this together.
Anybody else have some questions, or is Dawn going to have anything to say on this?
I think George and Sherry pretty much stated everything that we're trying to do here very succinctly. So I'm not sure I could add a whole lot there. I think in terms of the document, I kind of put this document together. Obviously, we're going to want it in a place where it's editable by more than just me, so that will be another goal. Although clearly, in terms of a document to be available on the internet for residents and whoever wants to look at it, just PDF format is absolutely fine, which is what this particular document is in right now. So that's definitely the goal. It's an ongoing effort, work in progress. We will be modifying it, improving it, adding more information as we get that information. So I think that's all I have to add.
Yeah, I recall Sherry especially was mentioning how you're working on a document that's not going to be 80 pages. So I found this to be kind of nice and concise and real easy to read, and I commend you guys on the work you did here.
Well, two things further. One is that we do want to solicit comments and input and suggestions, obviously from the council, but also from the community, because they will know some things that obviously the three of us don't. So we do want to get input from that, but with a what is assuredly going to be some power outages before too much longer, given the drought and the weather, and people just being crazy. We wanted to get something up as quickly as possible, even if it wasn't what we would consider complete, as guidelines, particularly go bags and material list and things people can do to deal with the next emergency.
Mhm. It sure covers the basics. I'd have an immediate suggestion, since we were just listening to the GCSD under emergency contact information. Maybe they could be listed, their number, under services.
Good.
Gualala Community Services District,
Good idea.
707-785-2331, I think is their number.
You have that memorized?
Yeah, I've had it memorized for decades.
Used to be chairman.
707-785-2331 if you want to jot it down.
Got
They
it.
they have another number on their site for emergency contacts as well.
Emergency, yeah. I think it leads you to that, but
Yeah, I just want to add my thanks to the group. I think it's great to see this kind of teamwork produce this quality of a document. I think for a first draft, and really, I don't want to qualify that. It's a very nice document. And I say that as somebody who spends a lot of time looking professionally at a lot of documents. This is really a good, solid, great effort. I think it's just about the right length that it makes it really handy to people. And I'd like to go through it and give it a little more thought. And if there's any way I can help in terms of suggestions on the layout or anything like that, let me know. But good work. And I do have one question for Dawn. Dawn, as I remember, it's a little fuzzy to me now, but a lot of your interest in this originally was on the solar front. And I wonder if there's a solar element, the power element that you want to say something about here.
Well, I don't think for a document like this, there's much that needs to be or could be included related to solar power. What I've shown an interest in the past, and I'm still interested in, but COVID has kind of turned everything upside down, was a microgrid for Gualala that would support essential services during an outage. It would not only do that, but it would also provide clean, renewable energy during periods when everything's normal. So it reduced dependency on fossil fuels, hopefully. And this microgrid would cover buildings, such as RCMS, Coast Life Support, the fire department, and maybe, if it could be done, although it's further away, the community center. However, all of that has kind of, gone to the back burner, obviously, given COVID-19 and what's going on. So, and I also feel, given now my experience with trying to get a EV charging station in Gualala, that things are not simple here. It's very complicated. It's hard to get money. It's hard to get anybody who wants to sign on to a project. And EV chargers, relative to a microgrid, is a tiny project. Microgrid is really major, and it would cost perhaps $1 million or more. So I guess that's why I'm not pursuing that energetically right now, for both the reasons of COVID and also the fact that trying to get that kind of money for Gualala when it doesn't even seem to want to do an EV charger is not very encouraging, quite frankly. So I'll be honest with you there, and that's why we're not talking about solar or anything in this thing.
Let me just ask one quick follow-up question to Don. Did you ever find out about the solar panels on the community center roof?
Well, as a matter of fact, in a discussion we had with Eric today, he mentioned something about the solar panels, and he said they were disappointed in the amount of power that the panels were supplying. So, and I don't have all the details. Maybe their system was not designed large enough. Most likely that's the case. I don't really know. but he indicated some disappointment in the power that's being generated.
Yeah.
I've been trying to reach out to them because they are obviously the first place that could possibly be an emergency shelter. And we had talked in the past about the fact that they have the solar, but they don't have the storage batteries. And we've identified some potential funding sources to get them the batteries. But I'm having trouble finding anybody to talk with there because their board is changing over apparently this month. I don't know who the board chairman will be, but Darla is stepping down. So I've been having a hard time finding anybody to speak with about all of this. So if anybody on the council has some sort of in at the community center, please let me know. Please work with us to try to approach them and talk with them, because I have been on the phone repeatedly.
Yeah, Sherry, I know
trying
that
to
they're
find
going
somebody
to,
to talk with. And right now, nobody's in charge.
yeah, the old board is still in charge up until their mid-July meeting,
Yeah.
The Gualala Community Center. And I know that they're going to go through an appointment process of who's going to be their officers at that meeting. So, and I know who the new board members are, so you can give me a call or we could talk, Sherry, and I can hopefully steer you in the right direction.
Terrific. Thank you, Robert.
You bet.
I have two thoughts on this. One is, I think both this document and the document that MCOG has put together are really valuable resources for the community. I certainly like the fact that this is much shorter than the 500 pages that the MCOG report is, but I'm wondering if there's a way we can try to meld the two. That's point number one. And number two, I'd like to suggest that we have a forum for the community that we can work together with Greg Warner and basically put together an agenda with him, what points he wants to cover from the MCOG presentation, and then we can present our summarized version. And basically, what's the overall message to the community? What do we want to emphasize, particularly as we're coming up into the fire season?
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Lloyd. There's been attempts, or there have been those kind of emergency forums before in the past, but now with a document, with all the work that the committee has done, I personally think it'd be a great idea to do something like that.
Yeah, George was going to talk with Greg this week or next week, so that has been discussed. Appreciate the input, and that is part of the ongoing process. There are also a lot of other ideas floating around, like I'm not thinking about power outages now, I'm thinking about a real serious emergency in the area, like phone trees, like other contact groups that would be looking after seniors that are alone and not mobile. And so there are a lot of things that are floating around out there that we're just trying to capture, but we at least wanted to get started.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah, there are going to be some things that aren't going to appear in this guide. They're going to be more involved with the implementation. I like to call it operationalizing, but Greg is probably going to play a large role in determining how the communication is done, during a crisis or disaster, because that's been one of his primary concerns. I think over time we're going to build a better network for communication. We got to a very good start with the first community forum. I think it was back last November. But since then, we've been, developing this ongoing networking with various people, and that's kind of a good segue into the question I had for Tom. Was that with the committee activity that you've had, is there a possibility that you might be able to give our committee some contacts within the local business realm, especially with the hotels, motels? There are points where information can be passed that may not be done on a website or a computer. It might be people who are checking out of a motel room. We're probably going to have to, at some point, sharpen up a communication plan and a distribution plan for this guide, but also a communication plan to make that information available to people. And it's not just going to be residents and business people in the local area, but it's also going to be people who are visiting.
Yeah, I think that's really smart to include that angle. And yes, there are ways to help you. I think it'd be great to put you guys on the agenda for the next HED meeting and have you speak directly to the people we're meeting with. There's usually only 10 or 12 people there. But just by putting it on the agenda, we could send out the report with the agenda to the group, which is about, I think we're about 36 now on the email list. There's really only 4 hotels. I don't have a good connection to the B&Bs. I'd like to build one, and one of my goals is to create a network of the whole hospitality industry, of all the innkeepers around here. So I'd like to work with you on that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I know that there is a network of people who do property management. For example, like Serenity goes beyond just the cabins that they have there in Anchor Bay. They also do property management for a number of people that rent their homes out as vacation homes. So those kinds of networks that aren't immediately visible, but they're there.
Yeah, we need to tap into those. And Kathleen Crosby's the biggest renter of rental homes,
Right.
both short-term and long-term. But she's an excellent source, and she's been at all our meetings, I think.
Right.
Former GMACer, I believe.
Yes, so all the vacation home rental companies down in the Sea Ranch, as well as up here in Walla, the hotels, that would be great to have that distribution list, yeah.
You know, what I would like to suggest is that as opposed to, and I didn't think we would do this anyway, but as opposed to going through this document point by point, which I don't think we want to take the time to do, if all of you would just review it, and within the next, week or two, whatever, if you have any little suggestions, if we missed something, like the GCSD number,
Okay.
shoot us an email. Maybe, George, do you want to collect all the emails and then you could distribute them to me, and or you send the email to all 3 of us. That's
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, that way we get your input, your ideas. If you see some glaring error or some information that you really think is important that should be included, let us know. We'll edit the document and then present it again.
Yeah, I already have a couple of ideas, and I'll pass those along.
Sounds good, Don. We'll get it onto the committee. Any input and comments we have. Okay. Be honest, I haven't thoroughly reviewed it, but just things come up as we talk. So anything else that we want to discuss on this committee item? So Sherry, George, and Don, we're done with that. Okay, thank you very much. On to the next report, which would be Housing and Economic Development Standing Committee of Finley and Murphy.
Great. I'll take the lead here. I haven't had a meeting with the community members this month, but it has been an extremely busy month. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to work with Melissa. I've reached out to her. We've had a lot of housing activity, and I know that's her interest area. Melissa, I know your last meeting, you said you wanted to leave the committee because we weren't doing housing. Well, we were hip deep in housing all month. So that's all I'll be briefing the council on tonight. And you're welcome to jump back in. I'm more than happy to have your research capabilities on this.
Yeah, well, Tom, I was...
Are we going to have a meeting anytime soon with someone who's going to be able to work with making housing?
Yeah, we've been having meetings. So let me tell you a little bit about what we've been doing this month. First, I want to say a lot of thanks to the dozens of people out in the community who've really helped give their time and thoughts to help identify key housing and economic issues. We've had 4 hearings over 6 months. Move 2030 was so impressed by this. This is Una Workbauer's group. This is a county effort to plan economic resiliency for the county. And I think I mentioned last month that she was contemplating possibly making us a pilot project for the entire county, and that has happened. We've become the prototype for the countywide planning effort, and Una works fast. So one day she calls me up and she says, how fast can you write a summary of all the ways that you gathered information for this? And I explained to her that I could do this pretty quick. It turned out to be overnight, and we put that into action almost immediately. The report was, this is basically, I was pulling together a lot of the information I've previously shared with the council, and a lot of information that I've been filing in minutes. There's really nothing new in this compendium, but I kind of, as I put it together, I realized it's not only an instruction guide for the other areas that would be doing this, but that it makes a nice historic document of the process we use to pull this together. So when you pull it together, it comes out to kind of an interesting document that I've shared with the council. I meant to send it out before the meeting. I just remembered during the meeting because it was kind of complicated getting the meeting set up today. No need to read that right now, but I encourage you to take a look through it. It's, again, stuff you've seen before for the most part. The report has been shared with the MACs in Westport, Laytonville, Redwood Valley, Hopland, and the MOVE Steering Committee. And I'll share it with Mary. Mary, you have a copy of it, and I'd like to include it in our record. It doesn't need to be, I said here, an addendum to the minutes. It does not need to be with the minutes, but it can be somewhere in the record. I'd like to have it in there.
This is showing on the screen now?
Yeah, you have a copy in your email. You'll get it.
Oh, okay, great. I was going to request that you sent that.
It's sent.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So Move 2030 asked me to explain the process in calls with other MACs, and there's been a lot of gratitude for doing that. I've been on calls with 2 of the 4 MACs that they're targeting, and the Westport Wave ran a full-page article explaining what Gualala did. I'll show that to you in a second. Some of the comments we've got is the work you and the community have done in Gualala is impressive. Una said, this is fantastic and exactly perfect to share with all locations. It's Tracy Pilar from the Laytonville MAC told her members it's the culmination of various meetings, subgroups, and hard work. Please read this good piece of clarity. And Thad Van Buren up in Westport, the example provided by GMAC is helpful. We face many common issues in our small coastal communities. I don't know if anybody's been to Westport lately, but it's really tiny. I asked that, and he says, yeah, it's true. There's like 60 people there, but they have a MAC, and they are going to be meeting. They don't have a good Wi-Fi system there. They are going to be meeting outdoors to do their planning session. I was pretty impressed with that. Here's a cover of the report. It runs 9 pages, and I kind of wrote a little editorial here for the sake of the county because I knew they'd read it. One of the consistent feedback points I get from the business community is that the county doesn't do enough for us, and they don't really understand the needs here. And so I emphasize that this kind of 10-year planning effort for economic resiliency really needs to start in our communities and filter up. And that's become the cornerstone of the countywide planning effort now, that everybody needs to do their own little plan, and then they need to piece it together. I called it putting it together in a crazy quilt. Here's the Westport Wave article, and just an excerpt. GMAC was already working on its plan before the county started its planning effort. Gualala faces many of the same issues. GMAC process involved several meetings that resulted in a report. Tom advised us to be sure to stop for a moment after every answer and ask the group if they agree. It helps clarify each point is reached in a consensus. And that's exactly what we've done. And now the report is also on the their website. So that's all I have to say about that. And I'm really grateful to the town for, when I looked at this document, my reaction was like, these people really came together and helped put together a lot of consistent thoughts. It's really nice to see. The housing update, one of the, by the way, on the steering committee, Brent Schultz was on there, Ted was on there, a couple of other people that you know, Diane Simmons from EDFC, the Economic Development and Finance Corp, and Marianne Petrillo, who spoke to our group a couple of times. She's the head of the West Community Business Planning Group. Out of that conversation came a couple of contacts with Brent. One having to do with EV, and I'll let Don explain that later, but we had a great connection also to Janet Orth from MCOG. Actually, that's the one that Don will explain later. But we had another conversation the other day with Julie Acker and Brent about the housing goals in the plan, particularly about building worker housing, which I've talked to the council about before. So earlier this week, I met with them virtually about ADUs and JDUs, JDUs being junior accessory dwelling units, both east and west of the highway. I won't read this whole thing. Bottom line is there's a new plan submitted by the county to the Coastal Commission. It's going to take months. If they get it back sometime this year, it'll be a miracle. They expect the county to, or they expect the Coastal Commission to tweak it and ask for changes, and then it'll go back to the county and then back to the Coastal Commission and yada yada. We could be well into next year before we have new rules for ADUs and JDUs. In the meantime, the old rules apply, and if somebody's interested in that, it's kind of complicated, but I thought it would be much simpler. It's not. There's a lot of conditions that if you do this, you can do that. If you don't do that, you have to be bigger, you know, yada, yada. So that, but I'd like to encourage people to look into that for JDUs and ADUs, and particularly because they do not require, the JDUs do not require a new meter where the ADUs do. Then a junior accessory dwelling unit is a small part of an existing dwelling that's sectioned off. I think there's a 600 plus square footage limit on it, but it would be ideal for a single person living on a minimum wage who has limited funds available for housing. The second question we kind of dealt with was possibly GPD land use for multifamily units, and particularly for co-housing, which is seems to be the rising favorite of the group when we talk about what people can do and talk about people actually getting equity. A worker who has a very low salary being able to actually, instead of just paying rent, have a good portion of that rent go to buying equity in their unit. And that's what co-housing is really, really good for. After a few years of living there, the value goes up a little bit to the point where they can take that money out, sell the unit, and put that money as a down payment on a house. So it is a bridge to go from being impossible to buy a house to seeing that as a light at the end of the tunnel. So it's something that I'm looking at, and we didn't, again, this is, I want to read one quote here. It's a very complex thing, and Julia noted, the rabbit hole goes deep and goes deep quickly. However, she also said, can't say for sure, but it sounds like it might be an ideal candidate for GPD land. So I'm going to be looking into various angles of that. And Melissa, you know, I'd love to have you researching this with me. It's right up your alley, I think. So.
To see some basic questions answered that no one has ever bothered to, I don't even think they've asked. I'm living in a 400 square foot house on a piece of land that is in Mendocino. I have to rent the land. I'm not allowed to buy a tiny piece of land this size and put my house on it. And yet I'm living on a tiny little piece of land this size with my house on it. Where is the logic in that?
Yeah, Robert, you probably know a little thing about buying land and putting a mobile home on it.
It's part of it's been a long existing mobile home park, and that where Melissa lives is an accessory to the mobile home park. I think in the beginning it was always meant to be temporary temporary trailers and RVs and things like that. But it's evolved into what it is now, Melissa, which is more permanent housing. And you were a great example because you were able to, with the owner of the park's permission, to design your own mobile or RV, so to say, on that site. So that's how it's evolved over time. The manufactured home park concept is a low to moderate housing solution, in my opinion. But how many properties are zoned or have existing zoning to do that in Gualala? There's only 2 places. And you see both of those places are filled up to the max. So I would say that just doesn't exist. That kind of zoning to get a parcel that small and to have sewer and water hookups is virtually impossible in Gualala.
Yeah, the biggest problem, Melissa, is the water meter. You'd have to drill a well probably for water. There are even limitations going in on wells now. And then there's the septic to deal with, which would be probably cost prohibitive to doing that. But yes, you could probably do that if you could afford the cost associated with it. I think
there's minimum lot sizes too, right? I mean, right now we've got 3rd-acre parcels where Tom lives, or maybe yours is a little bit bigger, but in all the subdivisions west of Highway 1, those are 3rd-acre parcels. Those are roughly, what are they, 13,000 square feet. You don't see anything zoned much smaller than that anywhere, except for if you get down to Santa Rosa in the neighborhoods, they get down to 6,000 square foot lots, you know, the regular city lots with water and sewer.
one of the things that we're looking at with co-housing, you know, people talk about micro homes and think they're cheap. They're not. They're nearly as expensive as a larger home when you add in all the permit fees and land and septic and water and all that. But you could take a number of those, cluster them together, and make a co-housing product on GPD land and have one water well and share it.
Exactly.
That's a way to go. It's extremely complicated, but we believe, well, I shouldn't say we. I believe, being the optimist I am, that there is a way to get there. And damn it, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and figure it out.
It's actually been done, Tom, up on Iverson Point. That water source up there is owned by the association there. And the well is actually on the east side of Highway 1, but it serves all the houses on the west side out on the point, on Iverson Point. I think a similar kind of project could be done right here in the middle of town. The problem with planning and with the town plan is that they want to do everything piecemeal. They want to do it project by project. And really that's not efficient, because if we get to the point where we can actually do projects, it's a very inefficient way of doing things.
Well, we should talk about that. That's something that, you know, we didn't really get into that with Julia, but I think the GPD district we have, I need to take a better look at that and see if we can do that as a way. I think there's a path there, and it's not only for worker housing. You could do the same sort of thing for senior housing, senior co-housing, which I think makes a lot of sense. And having it in town makes a lot of sense. Having it near emergency services makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So there's a lot of good things about this, but you know, it's a bigger discussion. I don't really want to take up a lot of council time for it tonight.
Yeah, but the association up there in Iverson actually started out as a single property owner putting a well in and running it under the highway, right. And then they formed an association to maintain the well and expand the services to the point out there. But it's a really good model to work from. I think if somebody went in there with a project, and I say into the planning department with a project, I think Brent would be supportive. And we might, you know, it might involve variances, but every time I've heard conversations about these things, or I've had conversations with Brent, it's always been, well, bring me a project and we'll work with you. So somebody has to come up with a conceptual design, but also at the same time modeling on what some corporations do with corporate housing might be a place to look too, with an overlap of that kind of model.
Yeah, another one of those is Anchor Bay. I don't know if you knew this, but the Anchor Bay campground is privately owned by an association, and those
Right.
people, there's people who live there year-round. There's people
Yeah.
who come occasionally and does a vacation home, and then the campground helps support the association to keep the fees low, which I think is brilliant. But I'm looking into a lot of these things. The research goes on. Melissa, you could use your research skills to help on this. I know it's an area you're passionate about. So we should talk, I think. I don't want to spend too much more time on this. I'm getting ahead of it already. But you can see the path I'm going down, and I'll keep you informed.
Yeah, that was one of my calls I made. I was making a call to Melissa, hoping that she would stay on that committee with you, Tom. So, Melissa, we'd love to have you on that committee. Okay.
I'm reading through this now, and I've got a couple of comments, one that gets my hackles up, but I will send them to you separately.
Okay, great. I'm happy to hear from you.
Okay, we're doing good here with timing here. We're at roughly almost a 2-hour mark. So we should move on to number D, which is Don and I on the public electric vehicle charging station in Walla report. Don and I have been pursuing this now for some time, since last month, or what was it, 2 months ago now, where the public station there at the south end of town became less of a possibility, and it still is looking kind of grim down there, wouldn't you say, Don? But
yeah, I'd certainly grim in terms of taking advantage of this funding that's available. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe long term something could happen, but it's pretty iffy. You're talking about the Caltrans pullout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people have been wanting us to approach some of the private property owners. I had a long back and forth correspondence with a property owner here across the street from where my office is. And I don't hold out much hope for most of the private property owners, but there are some encouraging signs that maybe some private property owner would consider this. But we're not there yet, right, Don? And the time is ticking.
No, we're not. It is unfortunate. The fact that COVID hit, so many businesses have closed down, other than, of course, the grocery stores and maybe a few others. A lot of businesses are hurting. They're not really in any position to fork out any money at all for something like a EV charging station, even though it is conceivable that the refund for a level 2 charging station would be close to 100%, if not 100%. As for a fast charger, that definitely would require some investment on anybody's part, because the maximum refund that is available through the Cal EVIP program is about 75%, and those are pretty expensive chargers. But on the other hand, you can potentially make more money with them because it costs more proportionally to use that type of charger when you're a vehicle owner. So the returns could be much better. But aside from the Caltrans pullout, yeah, there was some hope that another property owner organization would step up to the plate. There was some interest, I will say, into looking into this by the community center, but there again, it's complicated, and they're in the middle of a board transition, and the timeline that the Cal EVIP program stipulates, which is 15 months basically from the time you get approval for your project to the time when the project comes online, it has, 15 months is the timeline for a fast charger. For level 2, it's much shorter. It's only 9 months. And given the complexities of us on the coast here and the fact that we're in the coastal zone and permitting a project like this is most likely time consuming, and the fact that the county is not in compliance with the state's AB 1236 law, which mandates counties and cities to streamline the permitting process for EV chargers, none of that bodes well for somebody like the community center, for example, getting a project like this done in time to take advantage of the funding. So, it is unfortunate because I think this is a great opportunity to really pay for the vast majority of the installation costs for this. And then after that, it's potentially a moneymaker. But we're not in a good period right now, I don't think, to move this forward. Plus, the time frame is much shorter than it used to be. We used to have until October to find an organization or entity, and they moved that up to July 8th. So it's a week away now. But when I say it's a week away, that's just for the initial application, and that is fairly straightforward. And you don't have to have permits. You don't have to have any work done. It's just, okay, we want to do this. Here's the equipment we'll use. And property owner signs off on it. And that's it, to just get the ball rolling. But nevertheless, we have to have some entity that is interested in doing it and willing to take the necessary steps and front the money to make it happen.
So I guess that's about all we have to report for the moment. I mean, we're up against the deadline, and then maybe something will still happen these next days, but we'll keep you apprised.
Let me pause there for a moment. First, Melissa was unfortunately, had a technical issue and had to dial back in. So she missed part of the presentation, and I'll recap that with you, Melissa. I'm not sure where we lost you. Second,
on one condition. Change your hold music. It makes me want a sledgehammer.
yeah, I've heard that before, and I've never heard it myself, so I'll check into that. The other thing, Don, and I'm sorry, when I was dealing with getting Melissa back, and I wasn't paying close attention, did you mention the part about Janet Orth and Caltrans and the land?
No, I didn't. Well, I only mentioned it in the sense that talking about possible future use of that Caltrans pullout. But to recap a little bit of what our meeting with Janet Orth was about, the main issue with the Caltrans in terms of making anything happen there is the easement for use of part of that land for a charger, and then Caltrans' willingness to let an entity own the charging station and charge a fee. That's where Caltrans apparently is not going to budge. So Janet suggested another possible alternative. We don't know whether this could happen or will happen. In any event, if it does happen, it's in the future. We don't know when. And that is that Caltrans would cede part of that land to the county, and then the county could do something with that land related to an EV charger.
Yeah, let me give a slightly different take on that. I was on that call because it came out of the Housing and Economic Development, and I was introduced to Janet through that. Janet Orth is the treasurer for MCOG, and she used her contacts in District 1 with Caltrans, and it looks very strong, very, very likely that Caltrans will turn over that north end of the pullout to the county, which opens up a number of new choices of using that land. The county's very supportive of this. Janet rattled off a couple of funds that they might be able to tap for part of the money to put the charger in. We can follow up with, like, Volkswagen of America has a $2 billion grant program. They're giving money away to communities to put in things like EV chargers. So there's a number of avenues to pursue on that. And Janet's pursuing the turnover of the land. And we're supposed to have another conference call with her in the next week or so.
Yeah, I agree that that's basically what Janet informed us about. However, in terms of anything happening by July 8th,
that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, So this is a future possibility, and we'll see what happens.
And is the Chevron station a no-go?
That I don't know. Something still may happen there, but I'm not absolutely sure, and that's not something I personally am working on at all. Although I've provided some publicly available information to the entity that has an interest there, certainly.
You can name him. It's John Bauer.
Okay, this is John Bauer.
I think this came up a couple of months ago, and John was at one of our meetings, and I said, I think the gas station should be having these, and he got really interested in it. So I'm encouraged to hear that he's looking at putting in some sort of fast charging or a charging station at the Chevron. And I hope he succeeds. I hope he gets his application in by the deadline. And I want to commend Don for doing the article in the ICO last week too. That stimulated a lot of interest and helped raise the public profile of this project. And not to be too discouraged, just because we don't have a grant this time, there are other grant programs and there's a lot going on in this area. The city of Willits is installing a fast charger. How did they do this? Volkswagen of America came to them out of nowhere and offered them money to put it in. And it didn't go through the county, it didn't go through MCOG, it didn't have all these funding issues. It just happened. So, don't give up, be upbeat about this. We do need these on the South Coast. Walla is a very logical point for it. And I'm glad there's so much more interest in this and that you've made some inroads and that we have other people in the county working on this now. So I'm very optimistic that this is an effort that will succeed over time.
Well,
okay, I'm not sure I share exactly your optimism, but appreciate that. And once July 8th comes and goes, then yeah, we're going to have to pursue some other avenues, and maybe Volkswagen or some other option will readily appear. However, in terms of any more of this grant money being available, that I would seriously doubt. And as a matter of fact, I was in a meeting with Nelson Lomelli today, who is managing this Cal EVIP program for Mendocino and Sonoma counties. He's the coordinator at Sonoma Clean Power. And that very question was raised. And he said, no, there's not likely to be any more money.
Well,
and that, to me,
that's wrong.
To me, that makes sense. If you consider the state of the finances in the state of California now after COVID-19, we're in trouble. And this grant money was allocated well before COVID-19. So it's already in the pipeline. It's going to be spent. So,
yeah, I have to admit, one of the things that we heard on the first call with Janet was that the gas tax money is down like 15%. That's the money that goes to fund highway projects. I'm also hearing TOT funds are down sharply. Ted is putting out calls for what can be cut from the budget. So, we're in a bad time, But on the other hand, I see a lot of electric cars coming down the road. They're going to be coming to Gualala. They're going to need a place to charge. I believe in supply and demand on an economic theory basis. And I think the people who put in these chargers now are going to be able to take advantage of having people parked at their stations or their businesses or their motels. And I'm going to be bullish about supporting those efforts through the community for economic development reasons, as well as you are on just trying to drive the whole EV process. So, you know, I hope we can continue to work together on that one.
Okay, well, Don, I was on that call with Don today too, and Nelson was kind of not as optimistic that there would be future grant funds, but let's stay optimistic and maybe we'll make something happen still before July 8th. If not, we'll go to Plan B, and like Tom says, maybe there'll be, I maybe have a connection to Volkswagen back in Germany. I don't know, but we'll see. But let's not give up. I agree.
One thing I might mention is that Volkswagen is still making amends for their TDI disaster.
They sure are,
Oh,
yeah.
And
that's what the $2 billion grant came from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe they are a good resource. We'll see. Okay, have we discussed that item enough, folks? Do you want to move on? We're doing
Yes.
good here. Telecommunications Committee. That would be also Don and Tom. Or Don and Tom.
I have a little report on this. I'm going to share another screen for you. My last
Okay.
share of the night. Well, actually, maybe not my last share of the night. Are you seeing the telecommunications report?
Yeah.
Good. So a little data that I gathered from YouTube. Our June GMAC meeting has 99 views as of today. 80% were in the first views. It got 2 likes and added 2 subscribers to our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel. The average viewing time, however, is only 12 minutes, or about 5.8% of the total forecast. The chart on the right shows where people were listening and where they dropped off. It started big, and then 80% of the viewers left in the consent agenda. You remember that, like today, we had a kind of kerfuffle in the consent agenda with the minutes. The audience came back in. Some people wanted to see particularly the sheriff's report. When I put these up on YouTube, I put the time slot of when these things happen, which takes a little extra effort, but seems to have paid off because people tuned in right into the sheriff's report, and you can see 25% there. All the other topics were less than 15%, and that's 15% is, you can see there's a couple of spikes there that I don't believe are real viewers. They were just electrical spikes probably, because those people either came and left in a minute, or they tuned in for something and were so disappointed in the first seconds that they left. The May meeting, interestingly enough, remember one of our discussions is what happens over time if you're still interested in these things. The May meeting had only 15 views last month. It has 42 views now. It tripled in the last month, almost tripled in the last month. Similar pattern, started at a peak and then dropped off really sharp. Nobody subscribed because of that meeting. It was 32%. There was a little bump at the bylaws. People tuned in for that to 32% of the audience. And so about 10 people tuned into it. And then immediately dropped. Before we even got into the talk, it dropped down to 2 to 4%. So right when we were just explaining what we were going to vote on or what we were going to do, before we even had any comments on it, it dropped off. The coronavirus town hall was a news event, so kind of it's stale now. There's not a lot that has changed. And I mean, that is old information now. So that has 257 views, 90% of them in the first week. Just kind of interesting data I thought I'd share with you, but that's about some of it.
It's very interesting because it kind of mirrors what we experience when we're meeting live, like at the community center. When we have our quarterly sheriff's forum, we get a larger audience, as you've maybe noticed.
Just for Mary's sake,
yeah,
she's still with us. There's she, Mary. Mary, we have 3 guests in the audience tonight, and I can give you names if you want for the minutes later. But We only have 3
I
guests.
had everyone circled as to who attended, and I had 5 people who were guests.
I'm not including the GCSD in there. So counting them, it
Oh.
would be 6.
Oh, I'm including the GCSD, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus the sheriff.
Yeah, I got 6. So I'll just share that with you later.
Very well, thank you.
But-
I'll
but-
change that to 6 then.
Let me
if I
say
have
this.
5 written.
Yeah.
Last meeting, we had how many, 2 people in the audience last time. We've had 99 people watch our GMAC, get in touch and try to watch part of the GMAC meeting after the meeting. I think that kind of time shifting is really important. I really want to increase public awareness of what we're doing and public involvement in our decision-making process. So I'm really gratified to see almost 100 people tune into this. And by the way, a lot of those came in the last week. Noticed about 10 of those came in the last week. So it's promising.
So we talked about this back when we were first considering doing this, that we may want to continue having our virtual meetings. Didn't we all talk about that a little bit?
This is why Ted suggested it originally. He said it'll build your audience and get you more input. And, it's just a good idea to put them up on YouTube. So he was right, as usual, and I'm grateful for that advice.
Well, what I'm also noticing is it seems like people may not be able to maybe make a Thursday night meeting, whether it's virtual or a live meeting, but then they're able to go back and really see the meeting after the fact, right? That's why you have the 99 views there.
Yes.
Wow.
Same thing with the town hall. We had 100 people the first night and 257 people who came later.
Wow, interesting
It
stats.
would be very nice if we could encourage the sheriff and the CHP officer to attend every month, because people are exceedingly interested in what the sheriff has to say, and it's good information for everyone. If we can encourage them to be there every month, not just the sheriff's forum. And I'm so glad that he was here this month. That would really be good for the community.
Mary, we got to make sure we leave that law enforcement item on the agenda every month, right?
Yes.
And that we should continue that sheriff's forum every quarter.
3 months.
Yeah. And advertise it as such so that we hopefully get this additional audience coming for the sheriff's forum.
Yes.
Right, Tom.
But I would still like to encourage law enforcement to be there every month in some form or other. And that, I think, would bring in more people who are interested, and perhaps another seat to fill the council completely.
We need to automatically send him the agenda, Matt, or
I do.
CHP. Okay. So
I do. They are on the agenda list. Right now, there are about 7 or 8, 9 people who are on the receipt of the agenda on Monday. Absolutely. Julia Acker is one. John Bauer is another. Both the sheriff and the CHP are on it. There are a couple of others. So very definitely. And Ms. Dahl is also on it. She wanted to know about water issues. And so she's in Oakland, but she still said, I want to know about the agenda every month. And so I put her on it.
And keep the standing item on the agenda itself so that when we send it to them, they see that they're on there.
By the way, last meeting I mentioned that Juliana Cherry, one of the planners up in, I've dealt with up in Fort Bragg, she was the planner for the Jogus CDP, that she likes to watch these things. And I'm sure she watched the Jogus hearing. She may be watching this one. Hi, Juliana. She, I think it's very helpful for county staff when they want to go back and see how a CDP is handled, to hear what the specific comments were at the GMAC level. So there's that. And it's also good for the people who are applicants who can't make the meeting. You remember Mr. Chogas was not at that meeting. So I hope he had an opportunity to go back and look at this. I pointed out that to Juliana when I sent her the letter for the Chogus case, and she thanked me. I think she was going to go back and watch.
And I'm sure that the supervisor tunes this in and watches it as well. He is also on my agenda list. And you are a creature of the Board of Supervisors. So it is very informative to them as to what you are doing here and what is happening in this community.
Yeah, one of the things Ted said is
Next, please.
that it might encourage us to be more professional in our dealings too. So,
Don, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could maybe do a little bit more to promote these Zoom meetings, for our council, because I don't think we're doing much. Even on the website, I mean, you have to know that the link for the Zoom meeting is in the agenda. There's nothing else on the website that I can see that actually promotes attendance to our meetings via Zoom. I think there should be, a very visible notification on our website that, meetings are now held with Zoom. Here's how you do it. Or
yeah, I agree. The ICO today, they finally stopped saying that we were meeting in the community center at 6:30, but they said we were meeting at 6 p.m. at gualalamac.org.
I'm sure you have some good
Completely
things.
useless info.
Hey, Don and Tom, is there a way to put, I was looking all over at the last minute for the invite, and that's why I didn't, and then I went in on the meeting ID and password finally, but is there a way to put a general invite onto the website?
That's a Lloyd question.
Where the people from the audience or people that want to attend the meeting just go to the invite on the website and they can get on just like that?
Well, there on the last agenda, there was one of those one-click items, but it wasn't on the agenda this time.
Right.
It was not furnished this time.
I'm sorry?
It was not furnished this time. I had to type in a whole string of numbers to identify myself and a whole string of numbers to get to the meeting.
Yeah, that bogged me down a little bit too.
There was no website, one click, and you're on.
Yeah, I'll cop to that. Last time I put the link on there, and this time when I was doing it, I was thinking, well, this isn't going to do anybody at the post office any good, so it's better to put the meeting ID and password there so that they can go to zoom.us and get on. But I think on the website, I agree with Don, we should have something big on the homepage saying, here's our next meeting, here's the agenda, here's the link. And that map we have up there really doesn't do much for anybody. I don't think. It's hard to read. But
and you are invited to attend.
Yeah, encouraged to attend, and we really want you there. So, and then also maybe put up there that if you cannot attend it, we do have a YouTube channel and put up the address for that.
Exactly. All that information that you just mentioned, Tom, should be front and center. So people shouldn't have to dig deep, to somehow figure out, oh, the meeting is held with Zoom, which they have to do now. And the other thing I was going to suggest is, what about promoting our meetings in the ICO? And again, emphasizing that it's a Zoom meeting now.
I wish they were doing this. I don't know. I thought we were telling the, I had a conversation with Chris about this when we were having a committee meeting for HED. And I said, Chris, it's going to be a virtual meeting and it's going to be Thursday, so your paper is going to be out anyway. But in the future, could you put zoom.us and we'll give you the meeting number and people can get in that way? And she went, oh, yeah, we could do that. So
how about putting a little informational thing in the fence post?
Yeah.
I've done a couple of program things.
They used to publish it in the fence post that, yes, the meeting was happening and the sheriff's forum was happening. I have gotten her all of the information with the listings and everything not only via email, because she's on my agenda list, but also a hard copy every Monday of the agenda. And for the past 2 or 3 months, there's been nothing except in the listing of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the week's meetings, that you guys were even meeting. And there was no web anything on it. And it always kind of irked me because, you know, how are you supposed to attend a meeting when the ICO isn't even backing you with telling people that this meeting is happening?
Well, could we
And I
work
get her
it-
the information.
Could Dawn and Lloyd, could we work it just through the website then? That maybe we minimized our homepage the way it is right now and then have it front and center like Dawn was talking about?
I can look
like a
at that.
split screen type of thing?
I can look at that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, we don't want to completely do away with the homepage, but if it could be like a split screen, like I guess Tom is doing with documents and stuff, where it on the left-hand side, front and center, it tells us all the information.
My skills are adequate in posting things to the website and setting up new pages. But as far as changing the design of the homepage, that's above my pay grade. But I'd be glad to take a look at it.
Okay. Well, I mean, just a suggestion, because you guys are talking about front and center. Well, that would be one way to.
Yep, I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go for it.
How is the website done? Is it done with WYSIWYG or HTML?
It's done with WordPress.
WordPress. Okay, I
think
don't
we
know
need
anything about that.
I know a little about it. Let me work with you on that, Lloyd. I've built a number of WordPress sites, and I think we can switch a theme and have something that's much more versatile.
You know, it seems to me that if you can access the agenda for each meeting on the website, and you have instructions in the agenda to participate in the meeting, all people need to know is how to access the website to find the information on the agenda. That could be done, you know, on the fence posts. There are a lot of people that buy the ICO for the sole purpose of reading the fence posts. It would be a good way of getting the word out there, and people network within the community. People who are really interested can pass that information along. I hear people all the time say, "Well, if you look at the ICO on this page or whatever, it was in the ICO last week." People go back and get a copy and look at it. You know, if there's a consensus, I would like to try just putting a message in there. I've done this a couple of times for another board that I'm on. And it's worked very nicely.
I think we can all do a little bit of this, and I'll work with Lloyd on the website. George, maybe you want to talk to the ICO. Don and I can work on some telecommunications idea. One of our guests tonight just texted me in the chat and said that we should put it on the Gualala Trading Post, which I did last month, and honestly, I've just been so jammed I forgot to do it this month, and I'm kicking myself. I did put the video up on Gualala Trading Post last month as well, and I'll do that again this month. Thank you for reminding me, our lurking guest. I also want to share with the council the one piece of feedback. The one piece of feedback I got about the meeting last week. This is not pleasant. This is from somebody who I won't identify. She was kind enough to tell me she watched the entire YouTube video, and quote, I'm going to quote this: "It was appalling. 3.5 hours. No wonder you can't get anyone to serve. That meeting should have been an hour and a half at max, maybe 2 hours.
Hear, hear.
No business would allow a meeting to be run like that on the clock." I'm just passing that along as general feedback, and if I sometimes seem like we want to hurry up the meeting.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to go right to number 12, you guys?
Well, hang on. I have heard that at least a dozen times.
Yeah,
I think we all believe it too.
We're all being too polite to each other. We want to listen to everybody, and we're not moving along fast enough. That's the thing.
I think there's a good cue to move along, Robert.
Yeah.
We also, it's a terrible thing, but we enjoy talking to each other. And that's really a bad thing, but you know, we like to do it.
That's why we have all these great committees, right? We should be
Yeah.
doing our talking there. Okay, well then, on that cue, like you said, Tom, let's move on. Administrative Secretary Mulbert's report.
Yes, I must remind you that democracy grinds very slowly and very fine. So we are grinding fine.
Yeah.
Hey, if you want to hear word, yeah, if you want to hear wordy, listen to Gavin Newsom.
Uh-huh. He's got a lot of good stuff to say.
Yeah.
I worked 25.366 hours, and materials were $3.82 for a total of $384.32.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
You're
Lloyd
welcome.
Chasey.
Thank you.
Lloyd Chasey's report.
No report, no new news.
Okay, you still good on money?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairman Murphy's report.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a suggestion. I talked to Mary about this last month when she was doing the minutes. I really appreciate all the work Mary does on the minutes. However, when I read the minutes, one of the phrases I came across a million times is council member and vice chairman and chairman. And, you know, I honestly think that if we put the titles for us up at the top of the minutes where it says who was present at the meeting, that would be enough. And after that, I'm fine with people calling me Murphy. And I'm wondering, I wanted to take the sense of the council on this to see if you are also happy to forgo the 30 plus mentions of council member that have to be added to the minutes every time a name comes up.
Please.
Definitely fine with that. I'm not into
Are we
it.
all okay with that? I appreciate Mary's propriety on that, but it's just, it seems a little outdated to me stylistically. And I think we're better connected with our people. Stop using lofty titles.
Who was trying to speak there? Anybody? No?
Melissa.
Melissa?
Yeah, I said it works for me.
Works for you. Okay, so do we need to take a vote on that or we just do it?
No, I
Just
think
do
it's a
it.
sense of the council thing. Mary,
Okay.
there you go.
It's an instruction to me, and I will drop it. It will be Finley, Chasey, Murphy, Provence, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
et cetera, Mr. House.
Make it a little easier on your fingers. Okay.
That's fine.
I don't have much to report on either. I just am so impressed with all the committee work and the reports that are coming out.
You're here.
And the information that you guys are producing. You guys are all so brilliant. I just can't get over it. Okay.
Everybody's doing a great job. You know, it's great. We're getting a ton of stuff done.
I've never
And
seen a
I
council like
applaud
this.
to the council, and we're only 2.5 hours into this meeting, so thank you.
Oh, that's true. We are. So we're very close to that final point here. We got to assign this coastal development permit 2020 or 2020-0015 Graffin. It's located just north of the little old white schoolhouse that's north of Fish Rock Road, north of Anchor Bay there. It's rather simple. You just walk the land, and they're proposing to do 3 test sites for a well. Who will volunteer to do that?
I guess my question, Robert, is that something we really need to do? I mean, you know, some agencies, when they do referrals, not everybody necessarily always responds. Do we need to do a site walk for drilling test wells?
Well, it's very, very simple, but I mean,
yeah, we got a lot of stuff that we're doing. You know, is there any value we can add to drilling a test well? I'm having a hard time
Lloyd,
surmising that.
let me ask Lloyd. We still get paid for CDPs, right?
Yes, we do.
So that's why.
Okay. Well, and then hopefully we find a way to add value in that process.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what value we'll add there, but I know that particular property is filled with environmentally sensitive habitat. And the fact that they're drilling there without any sort of biological report is a little bit of a concern, actually.
Okay.
Yet they're trying to sell the property. I have to conflict, first of all, on that property, okay? And they got it for sale, and they'd like to establish water. So you have to feel for them on that regard, right?
Right.
So I think it needs to be handled, George, personally. So anybody would like, I mean, going to the site, visiting it, looking at the map, if we have a map yet for where they propose to drill the wells?
We do. I'll go.
Oh, great. Sherry will go as one person.
I'll be glad to go.
Oh, great, Lloyd. Okay, so we got 2 walkers. That's all we need. And then,
And Melissa was trying to say something a minute ago, but she was so, it was cut off or something. I don't know what she was trying to say.
was that on a prior thing or one this, Melissa?
It was just before the discussion about, Ms. Meyer said that she would walk, and then you asked for someone else, and then she said something, and then it wasn't heard, and so
Well,
I didn't hear it.
So far, we got
But
Sherry and Lloyd as the main walkers. I can go with
Right.
you, Melissa, if you want. We can go separately.
Melissa was going to say something.
No, I haven't. Oh, I think my cat's asking me to feed her.
Okay, well,
Ignore that. It's not me.
in that case, we're ready for adjournment. Is that correct?
Nope. I got something I want to put on the table.
Okay, very, very good, Sherry.
And we talked about this a little bit in the Emergency Preparedness Committee meeting this week. And it comes to mind in part because of some references Tom has made in his report that I just was looking through again and got out my magic little highlighter. Right before I joined the council, I sat down and read the town plan and was appalled. I read every word of it and was appalled. The demographic information that's in the town plan is over 20 years old, and the town plan as it sits, the town has changed so much in the 20 years since it was written, 19 years since it was written, it almost doesn't describe the same place, and certainly not the same habitat or the same community and environment we live in. I think my understanding is that one of the reasons GMAC was formed was for the town plan, and I really would like to put before the committee that it's time to take a look at it, to revise, update, and amend. I recognize it is a huge project. It's probably a longer than year-long project, but it is one that I personally feel is significantly overdue, and one that is squarely within our purview to do, especially with all the changes that we're looking at in terms of what Tom is doing with housing and economic development, what we're talking about in terms of streetscape. I think it is incumbent upon us to give consideration. We don't need to discuss it tonight. I wanted to plant the seed, but this, I think, is a very important issue.
I don't think we can discuss it tonight, given that it's not on the agenda, but thank you. I think it's a good suggestion for a future meeting.
It's not on the agenda, no. So,
I'm planting seeds, but I think we need to put a committee together to begin that process.
Can we put it on the next agenda?
how are we going to word it?
I think we need to do a little research on this too, about whether this is a GMAC issue. And I just don't know if it is on our purview.
The GMAC wrote it way back when. It took 2 or 3 years.
GMAC wrote the original one.
Why would it not be?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
Jim Lauder is still around. He was one of the original people who were on that committee and on GMAC at that time. I don't know if he was a convener or not, but I think he was, Jim Lauder. And he could easily be tapped for information as how they went about it. I also have all of the minutes from all of those meetings, if you wish to view them.
I would love to see those, Mary. I would love to see those, Mary.
They're right back behind me in my office, and you are more than welcome to come here and peruse them anytime you wish. Any of you can. It's open public.
I think we're getting deep into discussion here about this topic. I mean, I could see maybe amending some things on the town plan, but what, are we talking about a rewrite, or what are we? We
don't know that. It's badly out of date. It's nearly 20 years old. It needs to be re-examined and then decide what it needs to be done, if anything, to bring it up to date.
Point of order. This is not on the agenda.
Yes, and then we're discussing it too much here.
Let's put it on the agenda for next month and allow some time for it. I think it's a valuable discussion. In the meantime, if anybody's interested, I've done some research that I'm willing to share with anybody on the council. I think that it does warrant some conversation, largely in the next meeting, but there is information available. And yes, GMAC was involved in the evolution of that plan. Absolutely.
Okay, how does it sound if we write an agenda item, discussion and possible action about revisiting the Gualala Town Plan, something to that effect?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'd like to quote one sentence from the resolution of the Mendocino County that established it, and this is what the GMAC is for. The highest priority of the council shall be those issues concerning the completion or updating of the general plan and local coastal program, which may be reimbursable through the state of California.
Okay, well, that's clear authority there. Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the number one reason it was formed. And it took the county 12 years to okay it and pass it.
Okay, can we please just make an agenda item for the next meeting?
Yes.
I've got it written down, Don. Okay.
I have a agendized it, yes.
I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
So moved.
I beat you to it. George
Okay.
seconds.
Should I go down the list? Melissa, you in favor of adjourning?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Okay, Don,
Aye.
Sherry,
Please.
George.
Congratulations, under 3 hours. Aye.
Okay, Lloyd,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Very good. We get home while it's still
Okay,
light.
everybody say good night, Dick.
Okay,
Good night, Dick.
good night.
Night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Good
Good night, John boy.